welcome to episode number 152 of the LSR podcast. My name is Matt Brown, joined each and every week by the brightest minds in all the gaming industry. With me, I have Adam Candy. I have Dustin Gowker. You can follow them on the Twitter machine for free, and you should at Adam Candy, 2 E's, no Y, at Dustin Gowker. If you hate yourself, you can follow me at Matt Brown M2. Go in, subscribe, rate, review, wherever you find this podcast. And if you're watching this on YouTube, 1, thank you, and 2, subscribe to the channel while you are here. We will, of course, always have our state roundup at the end. We'll talk about a nice little advertising regulation piece that we have over on the site. Of course, we have to talk about California as well. Major League Baseball, some interesting stuff here. But Dustin, let's kick things off here with, listen, things are wild and wacky in the world of stonks, and people are trying to ease investors' minds and things like that. And that is a topic of a story over on LSR right now.
Yeah, I feel like every week now we're talking about sportsbooks heading toward profitability, and I suppose this is another example of that, at least speaking to the market. DraftKings CEO Jason Robbins, speaking at an investor conference, again, was talking about how it wants to have a higher win rate when it's dealing with sports bettors. Obviously, sports bettors don't like that, but sports books are like any gambling enterprise looking to make money. So Robbins is out there, like the traditional hold we know from Nevada is relatively low, but sports books are looking to expand that by pushing people to parlays, single game parlays. I can tell you by experience, single game parlays. I get a zillion offers a day from DraftKings telling me to bet a single game parlay. Probably, why? Because they make a lot of money from single game parlays. So so Robbins made some comments about this again, and it strikes the ire of the sports betting Twitter that wants to, we all want to be sharp bettors, we all want to make money, and DraftKings is just trying to get rid of us. So here, I'll just read one of the quotes. We're in an earlier stage environment, it's not the worst thing in the world to give people a couple extra winning experiences rather than trying to maximize how much margin we're taking. So it's an area of focus, but very deliberate. We're not looking to take money from people by forcing them into bets they don't want. So yeah, I mean, pushing people to single game parlays, for instance, people like single game parlays. They are the currency of social media right now, because they're ways to get spend a little bit of money on a single game and win a lot of money. They're obviously not profitable for the bettor on the long term, but this is again, this is the future of sports betting, is that it's sold as an experience, sold as something that people just like to do. Not everybody's trying to win and be a profitable gambler. I know you two guys are, but there's also this huge audience of recreational bettors who want to sweat, would like to take a small amount of money and turn it into a large amount of money. That's why the lottery is popular, right? So there's lots to unpack here, but it also is focused on, as all these companies are spending lots of money, they are constantly setting signals out there that they want to be profitable, and this is one example of that, I'd say.
And Adam, not to derail this, but on the single game parlay thing as well, I think one of the things that I think you and I probably knew anyway, just from anecdotally stuff that we've done over the years. I certainly know it from our sister site, The Lines, over there, with the stuff that I do over there for them, specifically like Thursday night football, Monday night football, Sunday night football, all these island games and stuff. The single game parlay stuff is popular because most people only watch one game. And so if you can get multiple things going in one game, it's just better for that person's entertainment value, because a lot of people don't have the MLB package or the NBA package or whatever. And if you can just focus on the game that you're going to get in your local market, well, that's what people are trying to do.
And I'll put a bow on what Dustin was talking about with Jason Robbins and DraftKings, and then get to your point there, Matt, because I think it's a great one about what is the utility of single game parlays, right? What we heard from Jason Robbins was not new. It's the same sentiment that he's expressed in the past, and I think that there were some folks who were sort of aghast that he said the same thing again when it wasn't poorly received, or wasn't well received last time. And to those people, I would say, he's not talking to you. He wasn't talking to you last time. He's not talking to you now. He's trying to talk to hedge funds, to major investors, and say, listen, we have a plan to turn this thing around, right? Because obviously the stock price has not been in great shape of late. Now, those comments alone didn't magically overcome the trouble with the rest of the stock market that's happening for everyone right now, right? Like, I don't think it's possible to look at DraftKings in the micro without looking at everything in the macro with the stock market. Hashtag stonk advice. But when we talk about the DraftKings situation in particular, I think just keep in mind who the audience was for these comments from Jason Robbins in the first place. Now, single game parlays we need to keep in mind something else here. This is about how can we keep people engaged, period. And this isn't a matter of sportsbook operators saying, we want you to come in here and learn how to bet and become regular customers of that. It is a matter of right now, it is a knife fight to keep people's attention for 15 minutes. And when we do something like single game parlays that give people the opportunity to risk a little to win a lot, then they're engaged, right? Like when we talked about the idea of recreational bettors being the future of the U.S. market, right at the beginning of this podcast, 151 episodes ago, we talked about the idea that it's going to be getting people who weren't engaged before interested. Well, the sports betting community can't dictate what people are interested in. They can try to be educational about what is profitable. They can try to be educational and say, you're not going to make money on these parlays long term. But you know what? No one playing Powerball is under the impression that they're going to make money on Powerball long term. There are questions about, predatory nature of certain things like that. But those aren't the questions we're trying to answer right this moment. We're trying to say, what's the idea with the popularity of single game parlay? And it's like you said, Matt, it's right in front of me. It's a Thursday night football game. I want to put $20 down to have something a little bit interesting about it. And I don't want to have to figure out what minus 110 versus minus 130 is.
Yeah. And people, you're on a, and if you're on an NFL Sunday too, Dustin, just to point, like, you're an NFL Sunday. Again, a lot of people don't have the NFL package. It's expensive. They're not going to the sports bars. They're at home. They're only going to get their local market game. So they're going to try to maximize what they can, how much they can bet on that game, that particular game, because that's what they're going to be watching, and so that's just the nature of casual bettors. It's the nature of how we're seeing this start to evolve here. Right. And so it's not going to change. I'll put it that way. So like we can scream and we can yell and we can do whatever, but it's not going to change. I mean, like, that's just the way it is. My friends, we've talked about this multiple times. I'm from Louisiana. My friends just got sports betting there. Every single ticket that I get sent to my little group text message of someone happy about a winning bet is a 5 or 6 leg parlay that they've won. I mean, that's just what they want to bet. That's just it, and they're not sending me tickets of like, oh, I hit the minus 125, whatever. Like, that's not what they want.
Yeah. I mean, well, first off, I'm a Powerball sharp. I'm always ahead of the curve on the Powerball numbers. Despite never winning the Powerball. But yeah, like people like this, I think it's lost. People don't love just grinding out sides and coin flips. Yes, if you have a lot of money, like again, gambling is every time. Most of the people who gamble on anything want a little bit of excitement. And Adam said it perfectly. Spend a little bit of money to win a lot of money. Like single game parlays, again, any parlay is an example of that. Do people know you're probably not going to win? Yes. People play the lottery. People go to casinos. Nobody is under the impression that
stand around a roulette table.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a ball going around. There's 38 numbers on the thing. Like stand around a roulette table. I mean, it's just what they like to do.
Yeah. I mean, the only danger in sports betting is that people feel like they have an edge. And single game parlays, again, maybe like you look, oh, I see a correlation. Maybe I feel there's a little bit of danger in that from a responsible gambling. But it is again, just people want to have a sweat. So like I can bet $1 and win a couple $100 maybe if I do this crazy parlay. Like that sweat is their entertainment, and maybe they win. Probably they're going to lose, but there's value. Again, there's value in that. We like to sometimes we like to crap upon like stuff like that where like the sports books are pushing you to that. But that's also people wouldn't be betting them if they didn't want to bet them. Like as much as they push them, people are engaging with them, and that's why they continue to engage with the product. So.
And Adam, just to put a bow on it, where you were going with this as well. As long as there are entities out there, and there are lots of entities out there that are available to educate the bettor, to educate the casual bettor, all the different stuff like that. I mean, like, it's not like everybody's trying to pull the wool over anyone's eyes here or whatever. Like, there are people out there who say, hey, look, just so you know, you're not going to get true payouts if you were whatever, but it's, the penalty that you're paying because they're allowing you to make a correlated bet, which typically you're not able to do, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. As long, there is the information's out there. I know the casual bettor isn't always going to go seek that out, but it's not like it's this dirty, dark secret, right? I mean, it's out there, people. It's known.
It is, and obviously it doesn't get pushed the same way that parlay content gets pushed, right? No one's directing you to the disclaimer and this fine print. But talk about our friends, as you mentioned a moment ago, over at the Lines, who have great tools to be able to understand some of these things. We have some content at LSR now that is going to be potentially educating folks on things like that as well. We want to make sure that those things are out there and being offered. And I understand the gambling Twitter argument on the other side of this, right?
I do
is
too.
That, right,
I do too.
The other side of this is you're pushing people into products they can't win at, but you're also, your other argument there is that, well, then when you have people who are trying to grind out sides, you're not taking real limits, right? Like you're not taking real prices on a lot of those, and that doesn't lead to a lot of balance in that ecosystem. Well, that's each book's decision, and you know, in the long run, they're going to figure out whether or not that is a profitable choice for them. They're probably not going to be doing the same volume if they have that situation, unless they are driving a lot of casual engagement. And that's where these league partnerships and TV partnerships come in the long run, is that right now it feels like the wager from the sports books is on, we don't need to worry about limits for sharps nearly as much as we do getting more $50 same game parlay bettors in the door and creating volume on that end.
Adam, let's shift to a story here about Apple. Of course, they were in the news just yesterday for another big sporting announcement for them. That was, they're going to carry all of the MLS games. And this is interesting, I think, down the road for us to talk about here on the podcast of just, you know, what this transition really starts to mean for the sports betting market as a whole. I think some good, some bad, right? Where we're moving to these streaming platforms. All of the MLS games, by the way, no blackouts, no anything are going to be available on Apple. The good, the bad, streaming is delayed. In-game betting takes a hit with all that. So again, there's good and bad on both sides here, but this is about Apple and Major League Baseball.
Yeah, and the latency issue is an issue that when we try to move from dual screen or even 3 screens, or Matt in your living room, 17 screens, like when we try to move this to single screen, then the latency issue is going to become a much, much bigger issue. And we'll talk about that when it comes to Apple and MLS. But right now, talking about Apple's Friday night broadcasts with Major League Baseball, I'm going to give you the disclaimer up front. I am not the target consumer for this broadcast, right? Like, I've watched it. It is what it is, right? I'm not going to ever be someone who advocates for it. But part of what they have available is something that I think speaks to education, just like we talked about, when it comes to sports betting, and the need to do it the right way, because they have some probabilities on screen about what's the probability this hitter will get a hit in this at bat, et cetera, et cetera. Well, Matt, you know baseball well. If a hitter goes from an 0-1 count to an 0-2 count, their chance of getting a hit in that at bat did not increase. And yet the odds on the Apple screen were suggesting that, yes, those odds did increase. A company called Nvenue that was at the back of this is defending its product, whereas Fangraphs, which those of you in the baseball world know does a lot of good analytic research, basically ripped it apart and said, there's no way this model is working the way it should. It's overfitted. And so these are not odds that should be on the screen. And here's the point for us when it comes to the sports betting world. People are just being introduced to these probabilities and odds in a lot of corners right now, right? Just getting used to the idea of, wait a minute, how can they predict this sort of thing, right? Like, where are their numbers coming from? And when bad numbers are out there, it doesn't help anybody. Doesn't help Apple, doesn't help Major League Baseball, doesn't help the betting community at all. And this company, Nvenue, look, if you look up the founders of this company, none of them have a sports background. None of them have a betting background. They've come from various corners of the tech world to try to take advantage of the sports betting boom. And God bless and more power to them. They've leveraged some sort of Silicon Valley connections to be able to get from their contacts in Northern California with Apple and onto that broadcast. But overall, this is not a useful thing for the sports betting community to have these flawed probabilities out there.
And Dustin, I guess, like, you know, just to, since we were kind of talking about streaming and everything in general anyway, here, we might as well touch on it just for a tad. I think the real test in this is going to be this fall, right? Thursday Night Football moves exclusively to Amazon, and we're going to see, you know, what this latency issue, how, you know, does this drastically affect in-game handle, betting, whatever, all the things like that. I mean, it's going to be interesting to see how they handle it on screen as well. Because again, as Adam's talking about, even with this Major League Baseball thing, is whatever you see on screen isn't going to be accurate, because that happened 30 seconds ago. So like it's anything that they put up isn't going to really translate to what you're seeing on your phone or your computer or something or whatever like that. So
It's
going to be put to the test these Thursday evenings.
Yeah, I don't think, like, again, we're in the bubble. We always say that, but like, I don't think people realize the amount of latency sometimes depending on streaming. Like you have no idea, like, unless you're on Twitter following a game in real time. Like, do you really know that, like, you're watching something that happened a minute ago and like these odds are bad? And, like, that's I mean, that just people just don't know that, like, depending on whether you're watching cable or YouTube or or Hulu or again Amazon here, like how far behind you could be. In NBA you could be like 2.5 plays behind if you're like, if it's bad, right? Like, it's so it's fascinating. Like, this this will be I'm sure a touch point for us going forward. The latency of streaming and the games versus live betting, because the live betting product can only be as people are going to get wise to this, but eventually that the live game product is bad because streaming and latency. Like, there's obviously a lot of people trying to affect change on latency of streams as regards to sports, but right now we're still in a world of hurt. And I'll just go back to one other thing on the education and odds, like, because I obviously watch Infinity Phillies games because I'm a glutton for punishment. It's weird to me because they just put up random odds that, like, if you don't know what they're talking about, it's so weird. So PointsBet and DraftKings sponsor some odds on Phillies broadcast, and they do like similar across a lot of baseball and a lot of things and regional broadcasts. But, like, they put that live odds of like minus 34.95 to win now. It's like, who, like, we know, you and I and Adam know what that means. Rando watching the Phillies games, like, what the F does that mean? They give no context to it. It's like, it just, again, like, as we talk about odds and what's going on, it's like we still have a long way to go to, like, educate people on what any of this means, because if we're just dumping odds in so PointsBet gets a mention, like, great, like, good for them, I guess, but it's rough because, like, again, I understand it, but I know most of the yahoos who are watching the Phillies broadcast or any baseball broadcast who are getting these live odds, promo drop-ins, don't know what it means, and there's not any care. A lot of times, not any care being put into what's being done there. So,
hey, Harper's awesome and Schwarber's heating up. All right, so just calm down over there. Adam, just to put a bow on this, and again, I didn't mean to put a topic on the rundown here that wasn't on there, but I think it is certainly sort of interesting, especially since we're kind of going back to the previous topic as well, as these sportsbooks head towards profitability. Is a lot of that roadmap is in-game betting, right? I mean, a lot of that they said is the growth of the in-game product and keeping people betting throughout the course of a game. Well, they've got to hate the fact that, Thursday Night Football moves to streaming, and that we're talking about the NFL Sunday Ticket possibly moving to streaming and all these different things like that. Because, again, unless there is something that they know that we don't, and there's some sort of innovation that's coming along that we don't know about, it's very, very hard. I mean, it's almost impossible for me on DirecTV because I'm I'd probably say 20 to 30 seconds behind. Like, if I had traditional cable, and I think traditional cable, obviously, as we know, is still on like a 10 or 15 second delay. So in the macro of it, I'm probably like more like 40 seconds behind when it comes to the live action and stuff. And then we know you add another 10, 15, 20 seconds for streaming on there as well. So, like, I mean, you could be a full minute behind really the live action that's going on. And as Dustin mentioned, a basketball game, could be 4 possessions or whatever, or something like that. So how they navigate this switch to the streaming world is going to be pretty interesting.
I'll do you one better from just this past football season. Your friend and mine, Dave Farah, and I did a show at the Mandalay Bay Sportsbook, and we had TVs with a DirecTV feed in our studio that were not synced to the TVs directly outside in the sportsbook. We were seeing the plays a good 15 seconds before what the people in the sportsbook were seeing. And we would be able to anticipate when the roar of the crowd was coming because we could see it on our screen before they could. And we were not like in the future. It's just that these TVs were coming in at different times. And I also think we have to point something out here that I don't know is a natural connection for a lot of people, but hey, we're in the bubble and we're talking to a lot of people in the bubble. We had such a push in the first 2 years of legal sports betting over official data feeds, and the idea that official data feeds are faster. They're faster by 5 to 6 seconds. They're going to give sportsbooks the best product, and that's why they need to be mandated into the law for everybody to use official data feeds. And then what did we have? We had the NFL take its product and put it onto a platform that immediately invalidates the use of official data. It's something that drives me kind of crazy.
This is absolutely true. I'm glad we brought this up, actually, because I think this is something, one, someone's listening to this right now and they are going to enjoy that we brought this up. And then two, I think it's something we're going to end up talking about several times over the course of the fall here. Dustin, let's talk some insider trading, right? Hey, everyone loves a scandal, right? So let's get into some insider trading here.
You know, you see a story like this and you're like, what is like, people are dumb, right? This is very dumb. Like, so the story is somebody at Penn National Gaming was aware of, so we talked about this before. Penn National acquired theScore media to acquire ScoreBet, to work in Canada, to leverage the brand. Recently, they got out of the U.S. with the ScoreBet, but focused on Ontario and the Canadian market. So when this was going on, before this was made public knowledge, somebody at Penn Interactive decided it would be a good idea to go buy a bunch of call options on theScore before it was publicly known. Told a friend about it. Then this week it comes out that the Security and Exchange Commission said, again, allegations, but that this guy was trading on knowing that Penn was about to buy theScore, bought shares in theScore, and then profited, $500,000 US. Like, great, you made $500,000 on that, but you kind of knew you're going to get
right.
I don't know, how dumb is this? If you're a publicly traded company, and especially one in gambling where you're generally heavily regulated, like trading on insider information, you just think it's not going to happen. But here it did. And, again, these are allegations. Seems pretty clear that the events probably happened as they were laid out. So there's been it seems like there's been a lot of insider trading around the gambling space, just in my news feed. And this is the latest example, but yeah, don't do insider trading, kids.
Yeah, just yes, that one we don't have to say hashtag stonk advice. We can actually say hashtag just don't insider trade. That's actually good advice. That one we will stick behind and endorse. Don't insider trade if you can keep from it. Adam, we talk a lot about California on the podcast, but typically it's more about nothing's going to get done. We have very, very slim chances of something getting done. What do we rate this as on a 1 to 10? You guys come back at me with a 2 or a 3, something like that. Instead, let's frame the question a little bit differently here and say, what happens if multiple things happen to go right over in California?
What's the best way for the audio version of this podcast to just see a shrug emoji, right? That's the question that we've been asked multiple times. What happens if they both pass? And what we've been telling people, without full information, was that the one with more votes will go into effect. But we've gotten this question enough that I talked to our Brad Allen and said, Brad, we need to actually write the explainer on this. We need to have a resource for people to go look at and say, what happens if they both pass? Well, here's the problem. We came away more confused than we did when we started, because not only did we go to the California Secretary of State and the Attorney General, we also talked to both sides of the tribal initiative and of the online initiative being pushed by some of the major operators in the country. And we came away with either no answer or different answers from everyone. So the Attorney General sent us back a note that said, we can't give legal advice. To me, it kind of read eventually we're going to get sued over this one way or the other, and we don't want to be out there on it right now. The Secretary of State's office, which of course is responsible for these things going on the ballot in the first place, chose to not answer us at all. The tribal initiative, their representative was speaking at a forum recently and said, we don't believe that they can coexist. Right? We essentially believe that it has to be our way, which is the retail only for now, and that would be it. And the other side of it, the online initiative folks said, well, we do think there's a way for it to coexist. And we talked to some legal experts who said, well, it seems like it would only be about issues that conflict between the two initiatives if they both were to go into effect. So we're not a lot farther along than we were when we started, right? We know that by the law we've seen in the past, if they are conflicting entirely, then, the one that has the more votes, if they're both approved, would go into effect. But this might be a grayer area, and we've already heard from the tribal side, and I would gather from the operator side as well, that it's likely to end up in court if both pass.
Dustin, let's talk a little bit about advertising regulation here. John Holden, of course, writes some really great think pieces and some explainers and some different things over on LSR, and this one is no different.
Yeah, and this is interesting. I was just in Toronto along with LSR writer Pat Evans, where this kind of stuff is really in focus, right? Because of the requirements of, or actually, like, you're not allowed to promote bonuses and talk really kind of transparently about what is going on at a sportsbook and the offers they have. So we have basically two models. We have the U.S. model, which is there's not a whole lot going on regulation of advertising. You it's kind of do whatever you want. And then you have Ontario, which is very closely monitoring how people communicate. I will say this, there is no shortage of advertising in Ontario. It just isn't promoting bonuses. You get like atmospheric, like environmental stuff. I saw it on Wrapping Trains commercials. Anytime I watch something on Canadian TV, like what a couple nights went out to dinner. Somebody's like, "Oh, you guys are in town for something. What are you here for?" Oh, gambling. It's like, oh, like DraftKings. People are getting inundated with this stuff, even though there isn't bonus information. So like, there's a happy medium. I think is what John's point is that. And I think we've advocated for this. There's like maybe a little bit of self-regulation of like calming it down is what we need, because the U.S. right now, New Jersey is actually thinking about, like, has pondered legislation, at least, or somebody's thought about introducing legislation that would limit when and how advertising can happen in New Jersey, and try to calm it down, because New Jersey, New York market is arguably the one that's the most oversaturated. People are just getting bombarded whenever they watch sports or almost anything else. And then but there's also Ontario, which is you're not really doing a whole lot to promote it either, because you basically have branding, and that's it. And that's not a great path to getting people to a sports book, and it's probably going to turn out in the numbers of the Ontario whenever we see those. So there's a lot to be unpacked here in terms of what is the best, because you want responsible gambling. You don't want to just bombard people, but you also want to convert people to the regulated market, and advertising is one of the best ways to do that. So, there's, again, I think like John and the piece here advocate for this happy medium of where we're not bombarding people. We're talking openly and transparently about how things happen. And, we all know getting to compromise in the middle doesn't always happen, but there is some kind of in the middle here, I think, with advertising and sports betting that we should be trending toward as an industry.
Yeah, Adam, when we take a look at the advertising thing, that's another one of the deals I imagine here over the next 2 years that we're really going to see how the strategy becomes a little bit more concrete, right? I mean, it's going to be, obviously at first, it's always going to be blast, blast, blast. Then there'll be some sort of pullback. Then there'll be, let's get some analysis on what worked, what didn't work, the different things like that. Is it this celebrity driven thing that actually works? Is it, other things that actually work, whatever it might be. So kind of seeing over the next couple of years how the advertising thing really shifts will be kind of interesting for me.
In terms of the advertising itself, let me give you an example from a Yankees broadcast that I watched earlier this week. And I saw an ad for FanDuel on the broadcast that was entirely about product. No celebrities, no screaming announcements, no promos. It was all about product. And I think FanDuel is in the place where they can kind of pivot to this, because they've done the acquisition, right? Now they're refining. Now they're actually going after the customers of other companies by saying, and this was the entire focus of the ad, it's easy to get your money out, right? And I think you're not only going after other onshore operators, but you're going after offshore very clearly as well. At that point, they said you can have your money in as little as 2 hours. I'll tell you what, in some of the sports books that I've tried out in Colorado, it's even faster than that I've been able to get some of my money back out. And so I just found it interesting that we're already kind of starting to see a company pivoting to away from, hey, look at us, here's our celebrity, right, come bet a parlay, to, hey, here's why our product is a little better than everybody else's. And so John's point, that kind of thing is a little more difficult to do in the Ontario model, right? There are restraints on what you can advertise about your product in the Ontario model. And I think John makes a great point to say it might be too restrictive. You might be hampering these companies and hampering the white market by not allowing them to talk fully about what it is that their product is. Or even if it's just, let's be a little more craven about it. Maybe it's just about bonuses. Maybe it's just about, you want to say, here's how much we'll give you. But part of here's how much we'll give you is to come try the product and to come try something in the white market, right? And see if it's a reason for you to potentially leave the gray or black market to stay in the white market. Now, on the other side with the United States, he makes the case that potentially it's been a little too loose, that it's been in front of maybe too many people at too many times. We're starting to see states think about pushing back on this, right? Dustin mentioned the New Jersey regulators. There's a provision in the Massachusetts bill right now that's attempting to put some restrictions on local advertising when it is, I don't know how they would define this, but reasonably believe that a certain portion of the audience would be under the age of 18. So even if that is not an enforceable provision, I think that you can read the tea leaves and say there are those in the U.S. who are saying, okay, this might not be 2015 DFS, but it's certainly becoming a little more than we want to handle inside of every sports broadcast at all times.
Dustin, I'm glad that Adam brought that up because, again, I'm going to, again, take us in another direction here, but it's all intertwined with what we've been talking about here, is I think almost even focusing not only on how easy it is to get your money out, but how easy it is to get your money out and know what you're getting is something that they can go and really start to do here. I think that, listen, if you're DraftKings, if you're FanDuel, if you're PointsBet, if you're any of these guys like that, like, taking shots at the offshore market without just necessarily calling them out, because let's put it this way. Let's say you crushed football season and you're sitting there on February the 15th and you choose not to take your money out, which, by the way, is typically paid in like Bitcoin now, typically paid in crypto, unless you want to try and go and, get some sort of crazy wire from Western Union and this, that, and the other and jump through hoops and take the chance on all that going down. The easiest way to get it is through crypto. Bitcoin's at $44,591 on February the 15th of this year. It is now sitting today at $21,748. You lost half of what you won over the football season by just not doing by not betting. If you didn't make a single bet, you lost half of what you won, unless, again, you want to do this crazy jump through hoops and go get, your money through a Western Union telegram that may or may not get caught and whatever and all this stuff and all that. So again, it's just like, I think focusing maybe like Adam's talking about, like less on celebrity, less on bonus this, less on whatever, and more on just like, hey guys, look, here's why this is so easy to do and why we are on the up and up here. Here's why we're on the level.
Yeah, and you see, and it should be indicative that FanDuel is the one who's really leaning into this, I think, right? They're focusing on their product. They're the market leader. They're like they've actually used Ontario as, I think, maybe a little bit of a testing ground for this kind of messaging. That's, you can't do bonuses. What can we do that is interesting to a user? And this is something I think they've hit on. I was looking out my window at a billboard in downtown Toronto that said official partner of the Raptors, get payouts faster than a fast break, right? This is what they're leaning into, and I'm not going to sit here and say FanDuel's doing anything wrong. They're the ones who are leading the way. So it is interesting that, and it is again into the future of sports betting is like, what do consumers care about? Because at some point, the bonuses are going to go down. We all know that. They're not going to be thousands of dollars of bonuses available when the market matures. There will be in new states, but as we get, this is all going down, and product is going to be a differentiator. That has been has been a bellwether in the industry, and as people talk about this, is that get payouts faster, a product that works really well, that has interesting stuff on it. Like, that is where it's all going, and it is all fascinating for sure.
Adam, as always, my friend, take us home with our little state roundup.
Let's open the window in Ohio, because we just opened up the application window today for certain sports betting providers in Ohio in anticipation of that January 1st launch this year. So that will be a rolling period over the next couple of months. It'll be interesting because we're going to find out a little bit more about who really wants to get into that market with this application period. They've promised a lot of transparency with it. We're kind of looking forward to seeing how that goes down. Not much to see how it's going down in North Carolina right now. We have an article up at legalsportsreport.com from Pat Evans where he talked to some lobbyists and industry sources that said, yeah, you know what, there was a lot of optimism for this last month, and we're coming up on the end of the session here in less than 2 weeks, and really hasn't been anything happening. So mobile in North Carolina not looking as good as it did not all that long ago. We mentioned the New Jersey regulators a moment ago, and David Rebuck in the Division of Gaming Enforcement. Interesting rules coming into effect in New Jersey that I think are something that should be probably noticed elsewhere as well, in terms of an advantage of the legal market and a way to potentially make it clear to regulators and legislators in other states that there are ways to make sure that it's not just a kid grabbing a phone of someone else and betting underage because their sports betting apps are going to require two-factor authentication. And so whether that's sending a code by text, whether that is biometric, whatever it is, this is another layer that New Jersey is putting into its sports betting apps that, yes, is going to take you an extra step in order to get in. But I think when it comes to actually knowing your customer, not just what we talk about with KYC, but knowing your customer and being able to say to legislators, hey, I know you're worried that little Johnny is going to grab dad's phone and bet the house on the Patriots this weekend. But hey, there's a reason that he might not be able to get into the account.
Guys, everything that we talk about here on the podcast, you can find over on LegalSportsReport.com. Go and find all of the great words that Adam and team are putting up on the website. As always, please go in, subscribe, rate, review if you're listening to us on the audio version. If you are on YouTube, hello. I know, uglier than we sound, right? But hit that subscribe button. Anyway, if you want to follow Adam on the Twitter machine, at AdamCandy, 2 E's, no Y, Dustin Galker, at Dustin Galker. And if you hate yourself, you can follow me at Matt Brown M2. For Adam, for Dustin, I'm Matt. Talk to you guys next week.